Take the conference line is open. If we could take a roll call, please.
Jeff Swearingen. Patrick Updike. Peter Huffman.
Present.
Marty Smith.
Present.
Tom Lampy.
Here.
John Benson. Annette Dunn. Andy Buffington.
Here.
Ellen Hagan.
Present.
Michelle Bischoff.
Present.
David Ness.
Here.
Jason Leonard.
Here.
Rob Rotter.
Here.
Carolyn Smith. Larry Smith.
Present.
And Angela Clauser.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Introduction of board members, starting with Sheriff Potter.
Yeah, Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff, representing sheriffs.
Marty Smith, Iowa Department of Public Health.
Larry Smith, Keokuk County Emergency Management. No relation to Marty.
Andy Buffington, Winnebago and Hancock County Emergency Management Communications, representing communication centers.
Dave Ness, Municipal Police.
Jason Leonard, Municipal Police.
Tom Lampy, DPS.
Chris Myers on the SWIC.
Peter Huffman, Iowa Department of Transportation.
Michelle Bischoff, Professional Chiefs, Fire Chiefs. Angela Clauser, Member at Large, Panorama Schools.
Ellen Hagan, Drill Fire and Rescue, representing volunteer firefighters.
Okay, was there anybody on the phone that I heard? Okay, hearing none. Welcome, everyone. I need the approval of today's agenda. If I get a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Michelle? Second? Who moved it? You moved it, Peter? Okay, second. Just further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Looking for a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from October 10th of 19.
Larry Smith.
Larry Smith,
Buffington will second.
Buffington seconds. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I was going to bump ahead, but I think we can just keep moving on here. This particular meeting, we will be electing the vice chair and the chair of the board. That will be a 2-year term for the chair. I'm going to do the vice chairman process. I'll turn over to Jason to do the chairman process. I will entertain a nomination, if there is any, from the floor for the vice chair.
Just to kind of open up here to make everything kind of out on the table, transparent. I am not seeking re-election for the vice chair role. I have other endeavors that I plan on attending to here in the next year that are going to need my undivided attention a little bit more. I don't believe I'd be able to do it justice to serve on the board. Next month is my plan to be my last meeting, so just kind of want to give that full disclosure to everybody here and to the audience members. So that being said, that's the reason why before I hear any motions come out with my name on it and have to decline it, I just let you know right away.
How long have you been on the board?
Long enough.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. All right, so I will open up for a nomination for the vice chair if there is such one. Nobody wants to be the vice chair?
I would nominate David Ness if he's interested.
Okay, I have a nomination for David Ness. Is there any further nominations for the vice chair position? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a motion to close the nominations.
So moved, Hagan.
Okay, Hagan, second.
Second.
Peter, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Okay, congratulations. We're already even. I was right there.
Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll turn this over to Jason for the chair position.
Okay. Something official here that you want me to read, do you?
No, you do what you want.
All right.
It's yours.
All right. So, moving on to the next position, as the chair of the Isicsb board, I will entertain a motion to hear any candidate that would step up for this role.
I'd nominate Chair Tom Lampy, continue in this role if he's willing. I know it's been an enormous burden and workload, but I think we've, for the radio system and the board, it's been remarkable progress has been made, and we, in my opinion, we need to continue that. We're on the great things are happening, and we need to continue the course.
Okay, we have a nomination for Tom Lampy to continue to serve as long as he is still willing to serve. Is that, sir?
I will, but just keep in mind that it's not that I'm going to retire next year, but I will be eligible. The decision has not been made. So I may or may not, what did you do, Sean? What did you say? Okay. May or may not fill the 2-year term, but I'd be happy to do until I'm here. As long as I'm here.
All right. So I have a motion. Do I have a second for the nomination for the chair role?
I'll second that.
Thank you, sir. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion about Tom Lampy or any other motions on the floor? Okay. Hearing no other motions, signify, all those in favor of ratifying Tom Lampy as the continuing chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you. We'll continue to do my best to get this thing to the finish line and continue. I think we've made a lot of good progress in the especially the last couple of years with the radio system and all of our policies. We've got good people on the board with a lot of knowledge, and our committees are working well. I think that's the key. The committees and the working groups keep us trudging forward here. But thank you. Okay, we'll move on with the SWIC report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations to you and Vice Chair Ness. All right, well, I'll start off today with a quick summary of some pertinent proceedings regarding our recent venture down to Charlotte for the TIA and TR8 standards meetings. We had several dispositions of several standards, some of which are going to affect us and some of us will not. Some of us are something we need to keep our eyes on for things coming down the road. One that's coming down the road would be the idea of what's called a TDMA control channel. Right now, the control channel operates in FDMA, which means that whole pipe is dedicated just for the nervous system of the radio system. If we ever are able to get a standard for a TDMA control channel, that opens up a lot of cool possibilities for us down the road of either expanding the data capacity of the network, potentially adding voice capacity by just flipping a software switch and all of a sudden the control channel is TDMA. So that's really cool and exciting for us. That work is ongoing and it has a lot of potential to give us a lot more flexibility down the road. This has been talked about for a while, but they've made some significant progress on it. There are also some discussions of working on some necessary ISSI standards. This is more so focused around with how radios work with talk groups and dispatch consoles and how audio is transmitted and received. And it's something that has to be done in order for some level of comfort with that device on a larger scale. That work is ongoing. It's a while away from being adopted into standard, but I think that they've made some progress on it over the past year or two. They've nearly finished some work with more modern measurements of antennas on radios. Right now, some of it's still old school standards that are antiquated by about 5 or 10 years. So some new standards for measuring how antennas work will be nice because we'll get a little bit more certainty on how some of these devices will work, especially with some of these newfangled antennas that manufacturers are coming out with. That'll give us some clarity on that. There was a review of an over-the-air rekeying standard. That's a requirement for ANSI certification. That was basically more or less rubber stamped through the committees. And one thing that we've kind of had our fingerprints on, there was a fix for compatibility issues between single-key and multi-key radios. This was something our encryption subcommittee talked about several months ago, actually last year, and that was brought up to the manufacturers that, hey, this standard is also a concern for us because this is something we want to look at doing. And since that meeting, processes were done to make sure that there was a compatibility established between those two radio types through standards, and that standard was put out to ballot for voting last week, and I've already voted yes on that ballot. So that's some stuff that has a direct connection to us right there. One last thing they discussed was system performance in areas with high noise levels. Think of your overcrowded shopping centers and things like that, where sometimes you have so much going on in terms of radios and Wi-Fi and cell phones that it might drown out some of that LMR stuff. There were some discussions on how to measure system performance in those areas also. So that's a quick and dirty summary of TIA and TR8. So if you have any questions, you can find me offline, and I'll do my best to get you any answers you may need with respect to those things. Some news for the board. I was elected chair of the Region 7 part of NICSWIC. This is a 4-state kind of consortium with Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas. This puts me on the executive council of the National Council of SWICs. So there's a little bit extra workload with that, but it also provides us a more direct pathway to offer feedback and ideas to the National Council of SWICs and SAFECOM directly, because I'll be in on those executive meetings. I've also been christened as joint chair of the Joint Technology Policy Committee that's run between NICSWIC and SAFECOM. There's several projects that are coming down the pipe with that, but one item that I plan on bringing up that has the Iowa perspective right away, this was presented at NICSWIC and SAFECOM in Miami. I was attending remotely for that one, but if you think back to some discussions we've had on the issues with wind farms and the wind farm turbines interrupting microwave backhaul between radio networks, presented that project as an idea or as part of a project, and it ended up getting support from the committee, so it looks like we're going to be moving forward with that working document and work product. It's going to focus on how agencies and states and other groups that may operate networks can take steps to protect their investments in LMR and if they have LTE, so that those networks are not interrupted with someone else's good intentions. I don't think any type of that non-traditional interference is intentional, but it does happen without proper coordination, so it's going to outline steps on how to protect themselves. A couple of final updates. We had our final webinar with the Technology Committee regarding some SCIP goals a few weeks ago. ECD has provided a draft of our SCIP following that, and it's been reviewed. We're making some minor edits to it. I noticed a couple of dates needed to be corrected, so we're working on that. My goal is to have the final draft up for approval for next month's board meeting, and my hope is that you'll have a document that's readable here within the next week or so. So, one last item, status board. We have the source code from Minnesota. We've downloaded it, we've sent it to some tech people, and we're working on compiling the database for the back end of it. That database will be the hardest part, I think. After that, it's compiling the source code that they gave us and setting it up so it writes to that database. My hope for this is that we still have it launched by the end of Q1 2020. And at this point, I'm working on identifying some PSAPs that we could use for the pilot tests for that program once we get that off the ground. That's my report, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Any questions for the SWIC? All right, thank you. 911 council report, Blake.
Good morning, Board. I can't remember if I briefed this last month or not, so I'm going to cover it again. Text to 911 transfers are now a reality, so we are going to be rolling that out in a kind of a phased testing environment. Lynn County did some testing amongst their 3 PSAPs. Polk County is going to be doing some testing to include DPS as well, and it's really just a pound T, the letter T, and then the FCC 4-digit code that PSAPs will be able to type in, and it'll transfer the text that way. So again, some control testing and get that out. Thought that was of note and of interest. We hadn't been able to do that yet. So training requests before the council that was approved today. Lynn County training for complacency, cannibalism, and critical thinking. APCO did a post-conference training for power of peer support, and Cerro Gordo was approved for 911's least wanted / am I just a dispatcher. With that training that was approved, that fund is exhausted, so we won't be able to accept any additional training funds for the next 7 months or so. That does come back open again in July 1st. An update on the shared services process. 10 PSAPs are up and running on the Zetron shared services. Again, 2 of those are DPS PSAPs, and JFHQ is coming up in December. And finally, on the last portion of the virtual consolidation, just continuing the transition with the wireline onto the next generation network. Expecting those cuts to take place kind of between May and August. Just plugging along, slow and painful process, but we're continuing to make strides. Any questions?
So that's good news on the text, because I didn't think that was possible.
It is good news. As long as Polk County goes well, I'll share that with all the PSAPs, along with a kind of an instructional white page, and really there's no provisioning or anything that has to happen, just away you go, you can transfer. I would recommend either having a cheat sheet with those 4-digit codes near your workstation, or most systems allow you to do pre-canned messages. So to do some pre-canned messages with those PSAPs you are most likely to transfer to.
Blake, on that, when it transfers, is it just going to continue to transfer that call or that text, or is it doing them individually, or where does it begin and end as far as that transfer goes?
It should transfer to that new entity permanently.
Okay.
Another reason for the testing, though.
So I guess my question would be, if someone was on the county line and it needed to go to one county and the other, what prevents them from a future text to 911 not following that same path?
It should be done at the system level to know that that text from that phone number during that active session goes to that new
So it's
PSAP.
the session, essentially.
Correct. And you should then be able to continue that transfer. So especially in the case if it's on an interstate or something like that, you should be able to continue transferring that text to the appropriate PSAP. It's also the way, we've never been able to get a text into one of the DPS sites. Location for text is really bad. So when you factor in, the interstate system is where you'd probably want DPS to get a text. We've never been able to drill down and make a text go to DPS. Well, this is a way, especially if somebody's being kidnapped on the interstate, to force that text into a DPS center where State Patrol could get involved easier.
Thank you.
Blake, is there any idea how long that session stays open?
Until the dispatcher closes it.
The one that received it.
Correct.
And as far, the transfer, obviously, I understand, but is there going to be any archived? Is that whole session going to be transferred, or is it
That's a
just
good
going to be
question.
a start from scratch and have to explain why you're
That's a
getting
good
this?
question that I don't know the answer to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, moving on to the User Group Committee, Chair Buffington.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. User Group Committee met about 3.5 weeks ago. You'll see under new business that we have 3 new applications to consider. We're not getting very good representation from RICS 3, 4, and 6, I believe. 1, 2, and 5 are more often there, those RICs, and it just kind of goes back to support the need for getting those RICs stood up. So I guess I'm making the plea that if you're a member or reside in one of those, take part. I know that in 1 and 2, particularly, there's been some really good discussions and some good things being done on the ground. However, some of those other, Larry in RIC 5 does his darndest to try to get pretty good attendance during his monthly calls and has limited success. So I encourage everyone to get the word out, participate, because those are really the grassroots. That's where we can take those concerns, those questions, or maybe those ideas from that grassroots level all the way up to the board level if need be. So with that ends my report. If there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Chair Hagan.
Monthly expenditures during October for the Interoperable and Broadband Communication Fund was $11,672. The October ending balance was $180,348. Monthly expenditures during October for Slick P 2.0 were $14,345. Of that amount, $11,476 were federal expenditures. The remaining federal amount available from the grant is $397,027. The grant ends February 29th, 2020. However, there's ongoing discussion of extending the grant period. The Financial Committee approved a request for 3 12-position battery chargers for the East trailer. We think it's pretty important to have batteries that are charged up in the event you need them. So that was approved. Any questions? Thank you.
Regarding the grant, our grant person from DC will be coming out to DPS here in December. Holly, what date was it she's coming?
December 3rd.
December 3rd, and they have to be on site to visit, and it's a full day of, it's not an audit, they have to do their due diligence and come out and actually see what you're doing. But during that meeting, we're going to discuss some in-kind match. Since we extend the grant to another period, our match is getting to the point where it's exhausted, our hard cash match. So I talked with her last week, and it's not a problem. We'll start doing some in-kind to make it come out right. So we don't have to come up with, out of our budget, which would deplete it, to come up with some hard cash match. The original grant was hard cash, because we didn't really want to mess with the soft match and all the documentation on it. And we had the money at that time, but now we can come up with some ways to not have to do that with in-kind. It's a lot more paperwork, but it saves us from pulling a lot of funds out of our budget, which we've already been cut in the past. So that's the story on that grant.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to governance.
So the governance committee met a week and a half ago. The only item they had on the agenda, that day, was we had received some amendments to the MOU between the state of Iowa and the state of Illinois in terms of how the comms are going to work. It was primarily grammatical stuff, really, when it got down to it. But we felt it was important enough with the changes that it does come back in front of the board. So when we do get to the new business portion of the meeting, I will be making a motion that the board adopt the amended MOU and have the chair sign it as appropriate. So, any questions?
I had a question on the bylaws. I was reading through those. Do we need to take a look and update, especially the number of members that was listed in the bylaws back in 16 was 15 members? Little stuff like that.
Yeah, we could plow through them.
Okay.
Wouldn't take no time.
Thanks. Okay, operations.
The Operations Committee has met once since the last meeting, and we have the single policy on control stations ready to go to the Standards Committee, and we continue our work on legacy systems to identify how those legacy systems will be replaced now that Isicsb is in place, or optimized, probably a better way to state it, as opposed to replaced, but optimized. So we're taking full advantage of what Isicsb has to offer, but yet not leaving anyone behind on legacy systems. So working through that, and at a slow and steady pace.
Okay. Outreach, you going to take care of it, or is?
As far as I'm concerned with what I do on outreach, we continue to share information that we get with all the people that have contacted us to be on the mailing list.
I do want to thank Holly for keeping the website up to speed and getting it tuned up. There's a new banner up on the top that says latest updates or new please read or however you did important news. So that gets your attention. I think the sheriff will be talking about the Leah ticker here today too, but she's on it every week to make sure it's up to date. Then if it's not, then she asked Sean for something, but she did go to a class and she knows how to do all that stuff now. So she will be our expert on the website, right?
Outreach thanks you. Yeah. That's nice to have it a little easier.
Yep. And we do have another session coming up in Mason City, I think, at the sheriff's office,
Yep.
December.
Yep, so the December outreach is for the PSAP training. I believe that's what you're referencing, December 4th. So the first one we had was October 1st, so this will be a continuation, a couple of small modifications, but that will be on the control station and the use of the control station. I want to stress that this is intended mostly for dispatchers. We have had other people interested and that have shown up, and if there's space, that's great, but the intent is for educating dispatchers. It's not necessarily, that's who our primary focus is on. We are already looking in the January for RIC 6 outreach. Thank you, Chair Buffington, to make sure to point out that who's struggling. So I will do an ask while we're there to see if more people are willing to step up and participate in the RICs. I can start making a little focused memo on these RICs in particular. I do believe that these three may need a little bit more attention, and I'll see what I can do.
In fairness, the chair of RIC 4 is Larry Hurst, who's the Mills County coordinator, and he's been flooding for 220-some days, so.
Sure.
I view that as a pretty legitimate excuse for, normally they would make those calls, but they've been literally swamped.
Well, maybe we can find him some help. So I'll put that as a personal note here to step that up. I've been getting good comments and questions about the newsletter. I appreciate that. Chair Smith has been keeping me on my toes, calling out if I have a link that's not working correctly or something like that. But we've had a lot more interest, and our click rate has been increasing, especially with all of our AT&T FirstNet updates. So that's really all I have to report, unless anyone has any questions. All right, thank you.
Training committee.
Yeah, I can handle that. So we finished our COMT course in September. We have a COML coming up next week in Burlington PD. As of today, we have 16 registered attendees, so that's way excellent. Our minimum is 15, so we're above that, so that's way good. We are also going to post a sign-up form for Incident Tactical Dispatcher to be held in Carroll in January, the 27th through the 30th. Today, the form is making its way to online, and there will be coordination with HSEMD to get it on their website as well. They should know very shortly, if they don't already, that that's coming, so that's good. The minimum for that one, I think, is 10, so we'll see how we do with that. We've been using an online form called JotForm recently to assist with the sign-up of courses, so it's not all this email exchanges and stuff getting lost in the fray. That's been working excellent. It's a free form. The one thing that we had to do recently was export all of our data from it, because since it's a free service, we're only allocated 100 megs of space, so we got to be mindful of that, but we were able to successfully export all of that as well. One final item from the training committee, we are looking at a COMT evaluation, and along with that, we are also working on the finalization of the updates of our COMU policy, so that'll hopefully be before the board next month. Any questions?
Thank you. Technology, I believe Rob's doing that for us here. Oh, man, you're over there. Wow.
Good morning.
Morning.
Rob Dennett, Vice Chair of the Technology Committee. Patrick couldn't be here with us today. We've met twice since the last board meeting. At our late October meeting, we had a meeting, our conference webinar with the CISA group reviewing our technology lane in the SCIP. After that, we discussed the co-locate document and then continued that into our next meeting. That's now been moved out of our committee, I believe, to operations. Also to the AG's office for a legal opinion. I'm looking at Swick Myers. Does that seem right? Yes. We've also begun discussing the convergence of LMR and LTE. We're sort of at a wait and see how things develop, but we're certainly very mindful of that convergence as it moves forward. Any questions? Thank you.
FirstNet Broadband, Chair Bishop.
Yeah, the FirstNet Committee has met a few times since our last meeting, and the content of those meetings was primarily webinars on the portal and how to do uplift, so as educating the committee so that they're better able to communicate with others in regards to how FirstNet works and the ease of use of the FirstNet portal. The upcoming item is that we are planning a trip to Boulder. It's looking like it'll be the end of January, first part of February, to better understand what the testing center does there in Boulder and just really be able to speak fully on the FirstNet process. And I'll let David talk about the towers and et cetera, but we're updated on those as well, but I won't steal his thunder.
Okay. All right, thank you. Leah Committee.
Okay, we did meet on October 15th at DPS. At that meeting, Holly presented us with the countdown clock for the end of LEA service, which she did send us out. I think everybody got it, a screenshot of what that looks like. I think it's a great idea. If you're not sure when support's going to end, you can click on that. It's actually pretty easy to find. I got on the website and found it within seconds. It's not hard to find. So we've got that, and then the on-air message was presented by Steve Ward from Communications. This is actually Rob Dennert's idea. I'll have to give him credit for it. To actually read a statement over LEA, which what better way to tell people about what's happening on LEA than to do it on LEA. So it sounded funny at first, but if you think about it, if you're not hearing that message, you've already done your work, and if you are hearing that message and it's bugging you, it means you have some work to do. So that will be put out on a regular schedule, varying by day of week as well as time. So you want to hit all shifts, schedules, whatever. If you'd like, I can read the on-air message. It just is simply this: all cars, all stations, prepare to copy message reference LEA end of service schedule. Effective October 31st, 2020, all LEA repeater services will terminate. Repeating, all Iowa DPS LEA repeaters will be inoperable after October 31st, 2020. Point-to-point and VLAW 31 will be unaffected. Additional information can be found on the Isicsb website, Authority State Radio. Pretty clear and understandable, and I think it's a great approach to get the word out. I really can't think of a better way. Further in that meeting, we also talked about some of the work that was being done on the co-location sites. At that time of our meeting, everything was going very well. There was a little bit of work that needed to be done at the Underwood site, and we were told at that time that probably by the time we met today that those issues would be taken care of. It was just some adjustments that needed to be made. Otherwise, functionality on the sites was really unchanged for users. They probably didn't realize there was any work that had to be done. And that all goes down to getting rid of those copper lines that have been our nemesis for so long. But other than that, I think we're on schedule. I think the big thing, and Chair Buffington mentioned the RICs and how important they are. We've said it before, and I think it's worth repeating, that if you are feeling lost and you don't know where to go, besides obviously talking to Chris, the go-to guy for a lot of things, your RICs is a great place. And so if you're not sure if you're going to have problems or you are having problems, the RICs is a great place to discuss it, because those are your neighbors. And what better place to work out how you're going to communicate with your neighbors than in that venue. So I really encourage people to take part in their RICs, especially if they are fearing the unknown here as far as the shutting down of LEA. That's the place to deal with it. So, any questions?
I agree, that RICS will really come into play here, and it is a great, I like the way you phrased it, a great place to go, because for the LEA information, after action reports on pursuits through the area, the use of the control stations, how that's going, the update on that, so everybody collaborates, and then maybe it'll just branch off from there on, hey, we need some more training on these control stations, we really don't know. So I think maybe that will hopefully spark, but we got to have a vehicle to get people there, and then we can put it on the website, we can send out massive emails to your sheriff association, the chiefs of police, fire, if we need to. Maybe that approach would help. I think we have the distro for all the sheriffs and police. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I was actually, we have our winter school coming up for the Sheriff's Association, and while the schedule for training is pretty well was set some time ago, we do have breakout sessions with the sheriffs, and that would be a really good place to talk about that, because that's where you're going to have, leadership of sheriff's offices across the state in attendance, and I think it would be a great venue.
Okay, great.
And I can follow up with you with that later and give you a little more date and time when that's going to take place.
Sure. Do it. Okay, let's move on to other reports, information sharing. Chris, you want to start off by speaking of control stations? Let's give everybody an update on that.
Yeah, so as of today, we have had, let me pull up the count here of the successful test calls with just control stations. We've had approximately 70 successful test calls. With those control stations, keep in mind we provided almost 100 of those things. To date, we have 2 that have yet to be delivered that are sitting in the warehouse. One of those that has not yet been delivered is because of a software issue with the manufacturer, so that update should be out this week or next week. So once that software is updated, they'll get their equipment, and then they'll be ready to rock and roll with that. One has not been picked up yet. I think it was an oversight. That'll go out relatively soon. We have one on order for University of Iowa. One of the initiatives that was added to this was adding some element of this for the university PSAPs and Regent schools. So by doing that, we've been able to ensure that the PSAPs at the universities, University of Iowa and Iowa State University, have something to get connected also. Kind of getting roped into this also was the Iowa School for the Deaf, since they're also a Regent school, so they'll probably get something as well once we coordinate with them and we maintain consistency with the language in the regions. As of today, the ones that we need to finish test calls with, there's approximately 25 of them. And most of those PSAPs that have not yet finished that test call, that's primarily because they have not had a chance to get their equipment installed yet because of scheduling issues with the vendor, or they may have had to order a part to get that taken care of. So we're making progress. We do have another round of test calls scheduled for November 22nd, and those are all done on the regional call talk groups. So that's basically the update with that, Mr. Chair. I'll take any questions. And if there's not, we can move on.
Okay, thank you. Is anything else you want to share, Marty?
Yeah, so first off, the Iowa Department of Public Health has notified all the public health agencies and the hospitals that pretty much January 1st, they'll need to have all of their new radios bought to be over on the Isicsb system. We're at about, I think, 70% of everybody moved to Isicsb. And it looks like by January, the end of January, everybody will be moved over. So we're quite happy with that. The radios are purchased with grant funds, which are provided by IDPH. We've provided a lot of oversight, but that'll be done soon. Secondly, today is my last day with the Iowa Department of Public Health. turned in my resignation about 3.5 weeks ago, which as a state appointee to the board, that means that I must leave the board, so effective about 3:30 this afternoon, I'll no longer be a board member. I'm moving to another state agency, the Iowa Department of Public Defense. I'll be working out at Camp Dodge as the lodging program manager. So, new venture, and right now, if there's any concerns or issues, or anything comes up in relationship to radios and IDPH, Cindy Hike, who is sitting in the crowd here, is the point of contact. She'll be the HON officer, the Health Alert Network officer, until they fill my position, which with a state agency, we know takes a very long time, so unfortunately. So I do want to say thank you. I think I've been on the board maybe 3.5 years. I'm quite impressed with what's happened in that time. It's been great to work with everybody, and I hope that the system is everything that we need it to be. So thank you.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Chair, I had one more item. I guess with Chair Lampy's announcement of the potential of not fulfilling your chair seat due to retirement, which congratulations, that I think what the board really needs to focus on succession planning. There's some pretty big boots to fill, or shoes. So being able to successfully transition when you do opt to leave, I think will be key to the success of this board going forward. So for the next year, I think we really need to make a concerted effort to ensure that we can take all that knowledge out of your head in regards to Isics and transplant it in probably several people's heads. So just that we don't lose sight of that and sit here a year from now and congratulate you on leaving and the rest of us going, now what?
I won't leave you hanging, but I'll make sure.
I didn't think you would, but just as a board, we need to be cognizant of that. At some point, you're in the near term.
Right.
The chair's no longer going to be here.
And I may fill out the 2 years. I don't know. It's just that
sure.
when you get into that, like, first of all, I can't hardly believe I'm there. I mean, talking about this 32 years. So when you'll just know it. I've been told you'll just know it. I can feel it coming, and you'll know it when it's time. So I don't believe in picking the date. Boom, I'm gone.
Right.
Unless, for purposes of the board, yes.
Yep.
But it's not going to be, hey, I'm gone next week. No retirement party. No nothing. See ya. No.
No. I wouldn't expect that. But
I agree with you.
Just
and
that
Jason
we
and I
all
have
need to
talked
be
about
open.
that, and Dave and I will have to continue to talk about that because there's a lot of stuff to.
My two comments are way easier than, number one, Hamilton County is doing their testing this week and with the council, so they're very happy to get that going. And number two, do any of you receive emails with the agenda on a Mac? Thank you.
We can
I
help you
don't.
with that.
It won't open.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, maybe somebody else knows what's wrong. Okay, never mind.
I have a couple of ideas that might help you, so.
They'll just recommend the Windows PC is all.
Recommendation number 1, yeah.
Okay, now for the good stuff. I got the laptop hooked up, and up in front of you on the screen is our program Genesis that monitors the radio system. It's been operational for about, 30, 45 days or so. So in front of you, right there on the speedometer, so to speak, there's 2,264, there's 2,264 radios connected to the network right now. There's, right now, I can't even hardly read it, 14, 18 calls in progress. The good thing is no busies, we watch that for sure. Calls per second, and then conversations per second. So if there's a tornado, an incident where we normally don't plan for, we watch that very close to make sure that that busy number isn't going up above a threshold. Down at the bottom right screen is it what we call a trigger screen. You can set a trigger up for virtually anything. And what I mean by that is if I want to know when Chris Myers turns this radio on, I can set up a trigger to send me a text and tell me his radio is now turned on. If you turn the switch on the dial, we can tell what talk group you're on. So if you get a radio stolen or anything and you want to know when that radio fires up, we can certainly report that for you and tell you what's going on with it. The other cool thing is for anyone that wants it, we'll give you a monthly report on all your push-to-talks, all your busies, if you have any, how your sites are performing, especially for operational users that are adding 3-4 sites. That's probably important to you. So we'll push that out in an Excel sheet, very detailed. So this is a you can't live without type of program, because the software that Motorola uses is very difficult to wade through to find an answer to something. So what Genesis does is it pulls all that for you and puts it in something you can understand. So if you put up the Iowa map there, all those, I don't know if you can shrink it to get the whole state or not. It looks like, Melvin, you got something in site trunking this morning?
There's something, and it changed while you were talking.
Is he here?
Yeah, he's
right
here.
there.
Oh.
I did that right.
Well, we set up a trigger for that, so we'll see what it is. They could be working on whatever. But this map here, every line that you see go across this is a radio transmission. So you watch that, and then those, if you hover over a site, like pull up Westcom, there you go. Hover over that and then a square will appear. Unless it's already up somewhere, that's... there you go. So that's the Des Moines simulcast system. So right now, there's 447 radios affiliated with the Des Moines simulcast. It's at 24% of its capacity, and there's 68 talk groups. So if you click on the radios, it'll drill down on who's on it, what talk group they're on, the last time they transmitted, their alias, all that stuff is on there. So Chris's radio is on right now on Iowa TAC 2. So let's see if we can find him, if we can see it. There's 15 pages. Let's see here. I'm at the top, if it helps.
Yeah, arrange it by...
Sort it by alias.
There's 15 pages, so.
Wasn't it on the first page?
Was it on the first?
DPS, Swift?
Let me do a transmission, maybe it'll go up to the top. Let's do last contact.
And you're on page 2, so you got to go back to page 1.
Back to page 1.
There it is, Iowa ISP.
No, those are trooper mobiles. M means a mobile. It should say, his alias should
In
say
the middle.
925.
Yep. Down. Yep, nope.
925 SWIC.
Up, down.
I don't even see it.
Right there.
Okay, there he is. There he is. So if I key up, here, it'll show that. And if you go back to the map, and I key up, it should show it. And there is a little lag here with the internet, but see how it keys up? Notes the streaks. So that's pretty cool. We're tapping into about 20% of what this thing does. I could send through 3 hours here, and what this is pretty powerful, though. It's a good visual. In the NOC, we have 8 screens on a wall, and we put certain things on the screen, so we have it separated. Like we'll put the map on one screen, the number of radios connected on the other, maybe a trigger screen, just to watch the health of the network. Any questions on that? Anytime they come out and see it, it's pretty neat to see when it's up on the wall.
So we have pursuit in progress. Alert. Contact 2.
Is that just because you transmitted on it?
Yeah, so when I set the trigger up, TAC 2 is our pursuit channel, so I set the trigger up if there's an unusual amount of push to PTTs on that, because normally you don't. TAC 2 is there's probably a pursuit, so there's a lot of radio transmission, so I set it up for that, and sure enough, it came up because I keyed it like 3 times. I can set it for whatever I want, so that's pretty handy. It'll also, if there's an emergency alarm goes off, it'll come up on there, so pretty much sky's the limit.
Name of that again was called Genesis.
Genesis, yep.
It's the software program that we purchased.
Yep.
2 years ago.
Yep. All right, that's, any other information sharing from the board members? All right, Melvin, I think you're up. Pretty responsive for person. Yep. Very good.
All right. A lot of activity happening in the background. A lot of it is not visible, so hopefully this will give you some insight. Right now, the current actions, we've been doing a lot of work in the Hardin site, which is on Region 1, on top of Region 1. We completed a compound. That means that the tower, the shelter, the generator, the gravel, the fencing is complete, so the site is secured. But we have overall plans that are just beyond the compound itself, but have to do with the property where the compound sits on. So there's access road that goes up that hill. There is a retaining wall that needs to be built to the adjacent property land. So all of that stuff has been approved. But we have not been able to complete that because we need there to be a legal agreement to actually allow us to complete that work. So while the compound itself is completed, the road and the retaining wall hasn't been done because we need access to the adjacent property to be able to build that retaining wall and swales and whatnot to be able to control the flow of water when it rains. We're still working on that. We go there almost every other day now to try to get some movement on this, so we're still waiting on that. We can't move forward until the legal paperwork is in place. All right, for the Rock Rapids, that's been the long pole in the tent, that particular site. So we did get the permit approved, and the construction has actually started there. And we are planning as if we're going to complete it by the end of the year. So it's sort of a mad dash. Hopefully the weather cooperates. So we've been making some good progress even now, even though it's cold. It's actually better that it's cold than wet. So it allows us to dig better without making a huge mess. And the tower is actually delivered and sitting at the site. So we have what we need. Again, it's just a matter of getting everything done while the weather is still cooperating with us. So I wanted to give you some visuals here to help understand as well. So for this tower, it's a guide tower, so it's different than all the other ones. All the other ones are self-supporting towers, the ones that we built. This one is a guide tower because it's a one-for-one replacement for IPTV. We can't change it because if we change it, then it becomes a new tower, and the paperwork process is completely different. So we're trying to shorten that process. We build the tower adjacent to the current tower. I think there's about a 50-foot separation, and then once we're done, we tear down the old tower, so it's a one-full replacement. That simplifies the paperwork enormously. What I wanted you to see in this figure here, this diagram, there's a couple of things. And you look at this piece here, I don't know if you can see my pointer. This is a foundation for the tower itself.
Then you have the tower with the 3 points, so these would be the guy wires in the 3 directions of the tower. And then these are the anchor points that, in essence, hold up the tower. And there is a total of 6. So there's 3 points in the tower, but there's actually 2 anchors in each one of those sides. So from our perspective here in this diagram, what I'm showing you here is this red stick that we're pointing to right in here. That's actually where the tower is going to go. So they're making measurements all the way out to the field because that's, those are the distances that are calculated in the map as to how far those anchor points need to be. This fence here is fencing in the existing tower, so it's just outside of that. So again, we'll be tearing down this fence and capturing the tower within the fence itself. So the focus right now is we want to get all the concrete work done before it gets brutal. So that's why we're huffing and puffing to get this done. What I'm showing you here is one of the holes for one of the anchor points. So this will be filled with concrete, and then you have the anchor, guy anchor that kind of sticks out at an angle towards the tower right here. So it's really hard to gauge what that looks like, so I'm trying to provide some perspective. These are all the rebar cages that already been built, and this is what the anchor the anchor is actually going to be attached to. So we pre-built all of those at the site. We dug those holes that I just showed you, and then we carry those and drop those in the opening. So the reason I'm showing this here is I'm trying for you to visualize how large these anchor points get buried underground really are. All you really see is that little piece that sticks above the ground with the cables. Well, there's basically equivalent of the size of a car that gets buried underground, about 6 to 8 feet underground, and then you get the anchor point that kind of sticks out. So it's pretty large. And here we have it all the way down, and you can see over here, this is the actual anchor that attaches to the rebar, and then all this gets filled up with concrete. And there it is, filled up with concrete. As you can tell, the concrete is this way, but the anchor is that way, right? And the whole idea is you want to have as much area wide to provide the counterweight. So all the stress that gets pulled, it's like you're trying to pull a car sideways. It's more difficult to pull it sideways than if it's straight pointing at you. And that's how these things are built. So we had to go through a lot of work in putting those in. There were water lines, of course, in there, so we had to work with the utilities as well. And they told us dig here, and we dug there, and we hit a water line. So we had to route around that, but it's just how it is, nature of construction. But that's why they were there, right? So that it all worked out. We were able to resolve the problem pretty quickly and keep on moving. Here's just the same picture, a little bit broader perspective, so you can see comparison to the heavy equipment, and you can see the concrete that's poured in there, and you can see how deep you have to go in order to get in there and do that. So all of that work is what we're focusing on right now. Again, the whole goal is we want to pour in all the concrete, all the foundation work, so then we can let all that stuff dry, and then all the other stuff is above ground, which would be a lot easier for us to do, even if it's really cold outside. We have the shelter sitting at the warehouse. We have the generator sitting at the warehouse, so once they pour the pads for that, then it's just a matter of delivering it to the site and dropping it in. So we made enormous progress. Again, we do have the tower itself was already delivered, and it's just laying on the ground. It's sitting there, so that when all this stuff dries up and we're in good shape, we can start building that tower up. And again, the goal is still to complete it before the end of the year. All right, so the next piece has been the alarm testing and wiring. Again, that's been, it's very tedious work and it's slow work because we're literally testing every alarm point at the shelters. In some cases, we have to do some special things to make it work. in some areas, you can't just say, trigger an alarm and it just happens, like a door or a smoke alarm. Other things, you actually have to do things to have the alarm trigger, right? Like in a generator, how do you trigger a high temperature alarm on a generator, right? Well, we don't run it hot, so we got to do certain things to do that. So we got to work with the guys that set up the generators. And in that process, we've uncovered that we've had to do some reprogramming of some of these test points. That's the whole reason why we're going through this. So, we've made a lot of progress in this, and I think we're really more like in the 90% completion of what those are. We've had several people, several teams. I had more folks added to my team, another PM, more techs. So it's been a tedious process, but we're getting there.
Alvin, I have a quick question about the alarm testing. You know, this year Iowa's once again has an LP gas shortage. So is your trigger points different, or are you waiting until the tank gets down to 20%?
No, we have two trigger points that are programmable. We have I think it's 85% trigger. So if it goes above, and then we have I believe the low point is 30% trigger.
Because I know in my local area, we're having an LP gas shortage, and so it's very prevalent that everybody gets their tanks filled based on availability. Some of the LP gas locals are only getting like a semi-load a day, and then so then they've got multiple places where they got to deliver to. Okay. So the shortage is very, very well known, I know, down in southeast Iowa.
Okay. Well, those things, if they need to be changed, is something that we would work with the customer support manager to make that specific site something that's unique and different. But overall, the standard is 30/85.
Okay.
And we got 1,000 gallon LP tanks, so that gets you about 2 weeks of runtime on a generator, assuming everybody's keying every single channel, so it's at maximum load. Otherwise, it's probably going to double because the load on the system right now is actually pretty light. All right, so the next piece is deliver audit quality testing. It's the "can you hear me now" type testing. So you've seen this before. We've completed the Burr testing, which is the automated bit error rate test, and we still have those two counties up north, Sioux and Lime County, because of the Rock Rapids site. So as soon as we get Rock Rapids site fired up, we'll be able to complete those two counties. As far as the, and you've already seen this map for the coverage results so far. And I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Given the results that we have right now, 99.4, we could actually fail those two counties and still complete the 95% of the state covered.
And Melvin, that's just the state-built sites, right? That doesn't include local enhancements?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, the next piece here is the actual delivered audit quality tests. So this is, it's a complicated process. We had test teams, we had 10 test teams scattered throughout the state, and in order to preserve what I'll call the line of evidence, is that the testers, when they're completed for the day, they compile all their stuff on a thumb drive and they send it directly to the state. And then, so we don't see it, we don't do anything with it. Then the state goes ahead and they score the test results, and then eventually the scored data makes it back to us, which then we compile all that stuff, analyze, assess, and figure out where we really stand. So it's a long cycle, but it's good because, again, it's a cycle that says we have no access to the data until the state has actually scored it. Right? So it goes from the field directly to the state, from the state comes back to us, and then we do our assessment on it. So what I'm showing here is that in that process, as we looked at tens of thousands of test points throughout the state. We've uncovered, again, and I mentioned this before, that we had some issues with some of the setups. So these are counties where we have to actually go back and, with my guys, and go back and retest some of these. So in the number in white in the particular county represents the number of test styles within the county. The number in red on the top side of the county represents the test styles that we have to redo. In some cases, it is the entire county. In some cases, is 1/4 of the county. So it's kind of all over the place. So we started this process already. We have 4 teams right now. It's about a 2-week process to actually go and regather the data again. So we started that this week on Wednesday. So we expect about a 2-week cycle to complete that. Yes.
I see what the white and gold signify, but what does the pink represent?
So the pink is saying we got to redo those, but we're staying away from those because there's work that's happening on the Westcom cell in order to add the Des Moines channels in there and to put the state frequencies, so all that coordination that's taking place. So we don't want to overflow and end up with data that's invalid because there's action taking place on the sites. So we're kind of pushing those for last. And then as part of that is, what I show here is that these are counties that, again, that the state will score, and wherever there's overlap between the counties that we have to retest and the ones that they have to score, we're going to hold back until we retest them. So it's a long and cumbersome process, but again, one of the things I really like, and we've already done it, is that because we have all the raw data, when the engineer puts these maps together and says, well, this scoring over here looks low, let's go ahead and look at it, we can actually click on the audio that was the source audio, and we can click on the audio that was the delivered audio, and we can hear the difference. So it's very helpful in overcoming user bias or whatever misunderstanding, but you can really go back in time and literally look at what happened. Which is why these files are huge, very big. All right, so beyond that, we got the completion of the functional acceptance test plan. That's all the functionality of the system. We are done with the one exception, and that is the digital notification of events. All this is setting up an email stream that the system will notify in any event, and not just failure conditions, but it's a change of status or something like that. So it's gobs and gobs of emails that will be delivered. So we're working with the state on setting up access to their email server, and we're looking at actually a meeting next week to finish the setup for that, and then so then the state can get all their emails. And I foresee somebody begging for mercy and turning it off later. Because there will be a lot of stuff. It's been used before, but again, we're just going to set it up specifically for the state so they can see the functionality. Other than that, the entire test plan has been executed and has passed. So what remains? Well, site walks is the last thing that remains. And the reason we haven't done a lot of site walks is because the process that we're in right now is we want to make sure that we have every paperwork, and I mean every paperwork in a folder before we actually go to perform the site walk. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot of paperwork for each one of the sites, and we're in the process of gathering that right now. So we're looking at doing a sample site walk next week, and my PM was telling me that we have about 40 sites that we can actually start doing if the sample walk goes okay, and we determine that everything is the way it's supposed to be, then we can hit go and start moving quicker on the rest of them. That's all I had. Questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, FirstNet, David?
Thanks, sir. No problem, sir. Good morning, board. So, Jared, where'd it go?
Was there?
It's coming.
Keeps flipping. Or that.
The same thing happened last month. I think yours.
Change your password yet,
I
right?
didn't see Bramer's not even on here. Sites that aren't on there that I was on, I don't know how many, but I guess there should be a.
Well, while we're waiting for the slide, I'll go ahead and talk about the other item I was going to brief you on. Last Thursday, November the 7th, myself, members of the FirstNet team, Chair Lampe, Chair Bischoff, Andy Sackrider, who is the head engineer, we had a meeting with the Governor of Iowa, Governor Reynolds, to give her a briefing on the build plan of FirstNet and how we've progressed in the state of Iowa since the inception. I thought the meeting went very, very well. The governor was very pleased with the numbers that we reported to her as far as the sites that have come online. She was very pleased to hear about the U.S. Cellular agreement that we entered in at the beginning of October to give Iowa coverage in areas that we have not been able to build towers yet. And she was exceptionally pleased in that area because where she is from, we have not built towers yet in the southwest part of the state. That's going to be part of the build plan coming on next year. So to be able to provide coverage in that area with the U.S. Cellular partnership was a pretty big deal. So again, I thought the meeting went very well, presenting with the governor. Last month, we added 11 sites with our build partner, Cover 2, which you can see on the map, and then AT&T ourselves, we added an additional site at the University of Iowa. Actually, we put it on top of one of the dorms to assist with the coverage there, especially during game day, just to have extra coverage when you have a mass amount of people. And I'm actually, courtesy of the University of Iowa Police Department, I will be at the game, Iowa and Minnesota this Saturday, to be able to test out how the service is working in that environment. So I'm kind of looking forward to a Big Ten football game this Saturday and glad that the weather forecast is in the 40s. So to date, since the FirstNet build started, we are at 124 sites in the state of Iowa. And we've actually, even though they're not on the map, to date this month, we have added an additional 7 sites in the month of November, which obviously will be on the map next month. So that brings us to 131 total new sites since Iowa opted in to FirstNet. So again, great progress, and it's just going to keep getting better and better as we go along. Does anybody have any questions or comments for me?
Are you free to announce the merger? The partnership you have, or did I miss it?
What's that, sir?
The partnership that,
He mentioned it.
did you mention? I must have missed it.
Oh, yeah, I've mentioned that last month. But
Okay.
yes, we do have.
I wasn't here, so that.
Oh,
that
that's right.
explains.
You and Chris were gone. Yes, sir. I announced last month that we do
Okay,
have the partnership
good.
with U.S. Cellular, and I've made that aware to everybody.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
No, I wasn't here, so I missed it.
Anything else?
Good.
right. Thank you.
Is Jim's not here today?
No, but he did send me an email, very brief email update. The 2019 revision to the National Emergency Communications Plan has been released. If you remember, we had some hands in that. Blake DeRushi, Rob Dennert, Wally, and myself were on several of those calls. So we worked on that with ECD to a large extent, and that has been released officially. And the ECD technical assistance offerings are now open. If you remember, that's how we get the ComEls, ComT courses from the feds. We're working on our submissions for those, and those will be going out hopefully in the next week or so. That's it.
Might as well keep going. You're next. Standards Working Group.
I don't think I believe we canceled the standards working group last meeting because we're waiting on some stuff from technology and,
All right. Since there's no old business, we'll move right on to new business. Back to you, Chair Buffington.
Thank you. The user group committee has reviewed and considered those 3 applications that you see before you and makes a motion to approve Palo Alto County EMA as level 1, Fayette County as level 1, and Lee County at level 2.
We have a motion for Palo Alto, Fayette, and Lee, 1, 1, and 2. Have a second?
Yes.
Ness is second. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, motion passes. We're now up to MOU between Illinois. Who's handling that? John?
Well, as I briefed about earlier, the committee did review the edits that Illinois had provided to the interstate agreement. They were minor. I believe everybody had a copy of it. Did not change anything inside of the technical aspects of it, just made some changes grammatically and some things like that. So I would make a motion on behalf of the governance committee that the board approve the Illinois State of Iowa MOU as drafted.
Okay, motion for approve the MOU on section 22B, updated Illinois MOU. Do I have a second?
Bischoff?
Bischoff is the second. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Leah, end of support. Go back to you, Sheriff, or are we doing something on that today?
I'm sorry, what?
We take some action on the Leah end of support ticker? What do we do?
Just basically to see if it was okay to put that on the website, if everyone had a chance to look at it. We wanted to make sure that people understood what was going on. We thought maybe if we coordinated that with the on-air messages and then the short written statement, that would probably make more sense to people. So just making those things, maybe be launched about the same time was our recommendation as a committee.
When would you like to launch it?
Really, as long as the committee is happy with the way the messages read, whenever state radio can start doing the messages and coordinate among those groups.
Up to you. It's, we can go the first of the year, or we can go end of the month.
Not tomorrow.
Or tomorrow.
What would you suggest, Sheriff? I mean, to give people enough time to actually, hey, look, if there are problems, we need to talk to some people. Obviously,
Right,
no things
well,
don't move very fast in
I mean,
government, so-
really what we're doing is getting the message out. The date, I think, is pretty well settled. It's just a matter of getting the messages out.
So tomorrow.
So, yeah.
As soon as possible.
Okay, so is everybody okay with the 2 documents with the Leah ticker itself? And would you like to have a motion on that to approve the ticker and we'll just do both here and on there? Is that way?
Yeah, I would ask for
Okay.
a motion to approve the on-air messages and the ticker. I believe we've already dealt with the short written message already, so,
We already approved that one?
yeah, so it would
Okay.
just be those 2.
So we'll just have I'll have you make the motion for the ticker, and is there a second for that? Hagan. Hagan's the second. Is there any further discussion?
Will there be, like, if you click on that ticker, this might be for Holly or Sean, could that link you back to that letter that was issued? Or is that getting a little...
We could put a link underneath it.
So if they wonder what they're clicking on...
Probably not, but we could put a link on it. I mean, that's possible. That's pretty easy.
Oh, the statement? Link
Yeah,
to the
so it
statement?
takes back to our original statement we had, so, what's this? What's this about?
Sure.
That would be.
That'd be easy,
that's how
Sway.
I would do it.
Yeah. Okay, good idea.
Okay, you guys are the experts on that, not me.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll approve the ticker with the statement underneath, so link back to the original, or the link to the original statement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're to the public comment section. If anybody would like to approach the podium and address the board, now is the time. All right, motion for adjournment.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned.